Well, that's not easy to follow. Yeah, I grew up in Chicago, and we are so fortunate to have Mayor Emanuel. Imagine having somebody that worked for the two greatest leaders in my lifetime, Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, that really changed the economy, and now we have this mayor. I had a quote I was going to use, but the mayor has done it. The best way to predict your future is to create it. Mayor Emanuel has done that in the city of Chicago. I'll date myself. I was working on many of the projects the mayor was talking about when he was at the Chicago Transit Authority. And 30 years ago, we were trying to figure out how to do the Red Line, how to do Wilson Station, and he's done it. That's incredible. And he's also done that with a great amount of diversity. He makes no bones about it, that every person in this city, no matter where they're from, should have an opportunity. And that's exciting. It inspires me as a business leader here in Chicago. You know, this morning I was holding my granddaughter. She's a little over a year old. And I remember 35 years ago, you didn't see many women. There were no Rebecca Scheinfelds running major programs. But in our city and in this room, I look around, and it made me feel good about holding my granddaughter to know that she's got a future and that I could come here today and introduce Erin Aleman, who is an executive, a young lady that's an executive at one of the largest DOTs in our nation. I'm excited about that. Please give a warm welcome to Erin. We want to hear what you got to say about how we're going to improve our state.
Thanks so much. I'm happy to be here this morning, and thanks for the introduction, John. It is an honor to be before you talking about transportation and infrastructure investments in Illinois. Our current Secretary of Transportation, Randy Blankenhorn, has charged our staff with being the most innovative DOT in the country, and we certainly can't accomplish this without our local partners. In many instances, our state roads are your local main streets. And NACTO's Urban Street Design Guidelines rightfully points out that great streets are great for businesses. And our roads can't serve as downtown catalysts for communities without us partnering in the planning and implementation stages. So being better at building relationships isn't all that innovative an idea, but from the state DOT perspective, I think it's a cornerstone of ensuring that our transportation decisions and investments are collaborative and that the solutions we come up with together are sustainable. Last month, I was invited to tour Central Illinois' city of Decatur, their intermodal port. And now, when I say intermodal port, I'm sure the vision in your head was containers, freight, railroads. And that's exactly what I thought when I showed up to town. But when I got there, I was impressed by the unique businesses, the cafes that they had. I was able to get a cup of coffee and a quiche at a great place called Wildflower if you ever find yourself in Decatur. But when I mentioned how impressed I was to the local community leaders, the city officials told me how they got there. Their main street had been designated one of IDOT's truck routes. And with a little bit of vision and a lot of community effort, they were able to convince our staff that it was important enough to them to remove the truck route designation, find another way for those trucks to get through the city, and really transform their downtown to be walkable. Walkable really can't compete when you have 18-wheelers rolling through the center of your town. I think this story exemplifies the point that I believe in the transportation field that we're guilty of forgetting. Streets can be changed, which is why I'm particularly excited that IDOT's Design and Environment Manual is working right now on revisions to incorporate references to our community's ability to be able to use NACTO's urban design guidelines. But we can and we must do more. If you aren't aware of this region's metropolitan planning organization, the Chicago Metropolitan Planning Agency for Planning, I want to publicly acknowledge the work that they're doing with communities in Chicago and across the region here in northeastern Illinois. Their local technical assistance program works with communities to develop comprehensive plans, transportation plans, land use plans, and that's done with a ton of community engagement. As part of implementation, CMAP works with us, the state DOT, to facilitate conversations so that there's a common understanding of what the community wants. And sometimes what you need is just somebody who can speak the same language and translate what it is the community wants to our transportation engineers. In addition to working closely with CMAP, we're proud to be partners with the City of Chicago on a number of projects that we think are so much more than just about reconstructing our highways. The Jane Byrne Circle interchange is the lifeline and connection outwards to all of the expressways in the Chicago region. It's been ranked time and time again as the #1 freight bottleneck in America. It's a critical access point. Presently, it's under construction, and the total price tag is about $600 million. As part of the Jane Byrne reconstruction, we've made significant investments to the CTA UIC Blue Line Halsted Street Station, adding a new canopy so that people can shelter from the rain when it's raining outside. We've made the station ADA compliant in partnership with CTA. This is a major connection to the University of Illinois at Chicago and the Greektown neighborhood in the city. The 95th Street Red Line station that the mayor mentioned is right in the middle of the Dan Ryan Expressway, our facility, and this too is a quality of life improvement. The $280 million project improves one of CTA's busiest stations. It has 24-hour service with 1,000 bus trips on a typical weekday. These buses connect the far south side of the city of Chicago with the CTA rail network. There are roughly 300,000 people that live within walking distance of the station. This project will bring significant improvements to a station that serves thousands of customers every day. Transportation is really more than getting people from A to B. It's about providing neighborhood options. In 2015, in partnership with the city, we also opened the first protected bike lanes on a state route. It's something that we hope to be doing more of here in Chicago. And also, other places across the state, we're making improvements and adding new stations along the Chicago to St. Louis high-speed Amtrak passenger rail corridor. In Alton, Illinois, we opened a new 8,000 square foot facility that includes bike parking and bike lockers and improves the sidewalk and walkability of the community. We've also begun to study the North Lakeshore Drive improvements, an urban boulevard that happens to be on a state route, which runs along the lakefront. Lakeshore Drive is more than 80 years old and suffers more than 3 car crashes a day on average. If funding were available today, the path of least resistance would be for us to fix the safety improvements, reconstruct it as is, and move on to the next project. However, the visionary leadership at CDOT and at IDOT are looking to do more. We're looking to use this project as a catalyst for enhancing livability of the communities nearby. Initial concepts include reconfiguring the beachfront, adding pedestrian enhancements, bike trails, and other green amenities. So, how often do we have the opportunity to use transportation investments to think big, like Daniel Burnham, and transform public amenities when we think about addressing a roadway? I'd offer that the answer is more often than we think. Even small transportation investments in communities can be catalysts for improved quality of life. In the same vein, new technologies are another prime opportunity to transform transportation. The vast amounts of data that we have today available to us can help us think about new ways to provide service to our customers. How can we use technology to better provide that customer service to transportation consumers? The technology is disrupting the way that we think about and design for transportation. Are we going to need overhead message boards in the future? I don't know. Am I going to need a tolling transponder? I can use my phone to unlock a divvy bike at any station here in the city of Chicago. So, on a personal note, I have 2 children, ages 6 and 3, and I read an article the other day that said in the next 10 years, children who are 6 years old today won't need to learn how to drive a car, a rite of passage that I know many of you have gone through. My kids will be the first generation of youth who don't learn to drive as a rite of passage, but now that probably doesn't mean that they're not going to have to take a test, right? They're going to have to be able to operate these machines that we have, but they probably aren't going to experience the embarrassment of parallel parking that I personally had to endure. So we transportation officials must work together to support these innovations. Technology companies aren't going to wait for us to improve our roadways. They're already adapting to what we have. And I, for one, am looking forward to the promise that automated transportation technologies bring to us. Every day I get emails from our communications notification systems about fatalities on our roadways. Here in Illinois, we've experienced a surge of fatalities, and we're trending at over 1,000 annually for the past couple of years. The mayor's Vision Zero initiative is in lockstep with the state's initiative to drive zero fatalities to a reality here. But what other steps do we really need to do to ensure that we're making this happen? While the safety benefits of automated technologies may steal the show, I think we as transportation professionals, planners, and engineers really must be diligent about equity when we implement whatever land use and transportation investment policies are needed for full-scale implementation of automated fleets. So, I'm going to take a step back. I just ran through a number of significant investments that we're making across Illinois in partnership with cities across the state. I hope you notice, though, that all of these projects aren't new projects. They're investing in existing infrastructure that we have. The vast majority of our program is maintenance, and our program size is down year to date, and we have yet to implement sustainable revenues that grow over time to support our transportation needs. However, when we transform our existing assets to better serve our communities, there's still reason to celebrate, to cut ribbons, and to have groundbreaking ceremonies. I know that Illinois isn't the only state in greater need of revenue, and the Office of Planning and Programming, under my leadership, is working to develop a number of performance-based project selection tools that help us ensure that our limited resources provide the greatest return on investments for communities. We're doing this by providing greater transparency and accountability at the state level and ensuring that the project selection process is transparent. In doing so, I really believe that we're going to see more transformational projects come from communities. One of the best things about making this process more transparent is that you know how to win. And I think that's a good thing. So I'd like to wrap up by just saying that there isn't another field that touches everyone's lives and communities on a daily basis. The public doesn't care about who owns the road, who owns the train, who owns the sidewalks or the bike paths. In the end, they care about whether or not it gets them to the places that they need to go. Transportation is about improving quality of life and livability of our communities, and I commend NACTO for taking leadership in these areas and helping to develop resources that professionals like us in the transportation field can use to build cities with safe, sustainable, accessible, and equitable transportation choices that support a stronger economy. So thanks, everyone, for having me. I hope you enjoy the conference.